Good evening from Raleigh, North Carolina on Monday, September 18th, 2017, shortly after 9:45 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. Remember to make all decisions and preparations based on official National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service products. So, shortly after, about a week and a half after dealing with Major Hurricane Irma rolling through parts of the Caribbean, we are dealing with yet another Category 5 hurricane. This is Hurricane Maria, recently upgraded to a Category 5 a couple of hours ago with maximum sustained winds of 160 miles per hour. Certainly rapidly intensified and turned into an extremely dangerous situation in a very short amount of time, which is very concerning for these communities and these islands here in the Central Leeward Islands. Barbuda up here, you can kind of see it when these warmer cloud tops, or cooler cloud tops, excuse me, these warmer colors come over, was the island so badly devastated by Hurricane Irma. So Maria is taking a similar trajectory to Irma, but is much farther south. So that is certainly not good news. We've seen what these kind of storms can do, and with this storm rapidly intensifying and hitting at night, certainly paints a grim picture, and we're hoping that they're taking all precautions that they can. But as you can see, extremely intense convection around here, very cool cloud tops, a very symmetrical system. I think a very rough estimate is about 350 miles maybe from the top to the bottom of this infrared imagery here, the width of the storm, but an extremely dire situation. And as you can see over the past few scans, it appears that a Category 5 Maria is making a landfall on southeastern Dominica, which has a population just north of 70,000. Up here we have Guadeloupe, which has a population just over 400,000 at the of the latest census, and then Martinique down here, which has a population just north of 380,000. So an extremely populated area in the Leeward Islands here, dealing with extremely dangerous weather tonight with torrential rains, extremely dangerous winds, and we can only hope for the best, but this thing has swollen up into a beast, a buzzsaw, a very, very dangerous storm in just about 24 to 36 hours. So certainly not good news there. We can only hope for the best and see what's going on. So that's the focus on Maria. And if we take a quick look outward, we see there are currently two active tropical cyclones and then Tropical Depression Lee out here, which was a tropical storm a couple of days ago, but has since kind of dissipated and fizzled out. We have a Category 1 Hurricane Jose actually off the coast of eastern North Carolina right now, which is going to possibly play a role in Maria's fate in the future. So we have to keep an eye on Hurricane Jose. No threat to land, but definitely a threat for rip currents and high waves, all up and down the eastern seaboard here from the Outer Banks up to mid-Atlantic and up through Cape Cod. So certainly a detriment to those areas, but not a landfalling system. However, if we take a look at Maria and look at the current forecast track, this is the 5-day forecast cone from the National Hurricane Center, an official forecast. And within this solid shade is anything within 3 days. The dotted is within 5 days. And this is a cone of uncertainty. This just shows where the center of the hurricane is expected to go, not just where the impacts will be limited to. So if the center of the storm is here, obviously parts of Hispaniola here, Haiti, the Dominican Republic, and parts of southeastern Cuba will see impacts as well. So you have to remember that this is just the forecast of the center of the storm. As I said earlier, a rough estimate, about 350 miles of the size of the storm will be impacting on either side. And this M denotes a major hurricane, which is winds of 115 miles per hour or greater, also known as a Category 3. So as you can see, Hurricane Maria here is not expected to weaken at all, even after passing and directly striking Puerto Rico, which I'll talk about in just a moment. Just a very terrible path it's taking with a very high population. A lot of tourists. It's just a very, very dire situation for those people, and we can only hope that they've taken adequate precautions after seeing what Hurricane Irma did just I believe it was a few weeks ago. My mind's kind of, these storms have just come one after another. It's some kind of made my brain go to mush when thinking about dates, but we had Hurricane Harvey, followed by Hurricane Irma, now we have Hurricane Maria. So everything's moving at a very rapid pace, and some of these communities are just beginning to clean up after a storm, and here comes another Category 5 hurricane. So the bottom line here is that it's expected to remain a Category 5 hurricane, and what it does beyond this point is very important for interest on the East Coast here in North Carolina, the Carolinas, the East Coast. we have to keep that in mind. I'll touch on that in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about Puerto Rico, which is forecast to take a direct hit from Hurricane Maria. Puerto Rico was kind of spared from Irma. It was dealt quite a blow from the north. The storm passed to the north, so it had very strong winds, but it did not take a direct hit, which is fortunate. But there was obviously still a lot of damage observed. But Hurricane Maria appears to be making a beeline for Puerto Rico, which is certainly not good news. And if you look, if I zoom in here, I think I can zoom in. The quality of the picture has kind of gone down, but you can see that it's kind of on the eastern half of Puerto Rico, which is even worse news because I have found a population density map here of Puerto Rico from the 2000 census. And the darker the shade here, the more densely populated, so the more people you have in the same amount of area. Excuse me. And this is the San Juan metropolitan area, the capital of Puerto Rico. This is another city, Ponce down here, and then Caguas in here are the three kind of things that catch your eye immediately. And if you kind of bisect the island down the middle here of Puerto Rico, most of the population is number one on the coast, which is most prone to hurricanes, and it's on this eastern half. And if that track does verify, it would have Maria coming through. If I can get a color here just to kind of visualize. It would have, Maria coming up through this area and something like this. I don't know the exact details of the forecast, but if that were to happen, all of this on the right side of the eye is where the most intense, the right front quadrant, you might have heard it called, is the most intense part of a hurricane. That certainly is very worrying news if that track were to verify, because all of this population, the capital of Puerto Rico, and all of these areas here along the coast would be at extreme risk for catastrophic winds and extremely high storm surge, and just kind of a mess unfolding if that track were to unfold. Certainly can't forget about anyone over here, and we won't, but the worst of the impacts would probably be felt on this kind of, if you were to bisect halfway, this half of Puerto Rico over here. So that's certainly something to watch. Hopefully the track wobbles a little out of the way so that it misses the island, but unfortunately it looks like the track is kind of honed in, making a beeline straight for the southeastern coast of Puerto Rico, and then crossing right over land, going back over open waters, having a chance to re-intensify. That is certainly worrying news, but we have to keep an eye on that and see what Hurricane Maria does. So that's the short term, but if we look in the long term toward impacts in central North Carolina here and then the East Coast as a whole, we can compare models here. And I don't like showing deterministic models, which means you have a snapshot. It shows you one solution based on averaging a couple of other runs, but doesn't give you kind of an idea of the spread. So I'm not a huge fan of this, but it is the best at showing at this long range out what we can expect. So this is the GFS, the Global Forecast System, or American model. And this bowling ball out here is Hurricane Jose. This is a graphic of anomaly. So what you're seeing with the blue shades are actually lower than average mean sea level pressure, and then the warmer hues are above. So you have your high pressure up here where you have your warmer colors, and low pressure where a cyclonically rotating storm, which a hurricane is, it rotates cyclonically, it rotates counterclockwise. That's indicating a hurricane, or this vast concentration represents a hurricane. Otherwise, it's showing areas of lower pressure. And as you can see, we have Jose here, and if I step forward in time, Jose begins to move out and never makes a landfall, but can deal some very high winds up here in New Jersey and southern parts of New England, and then Long Island, and then Cape Cod. So certainly something to watch out for there. Power outage is a huge possibility, but not making a direct landfall. And Jose continues out here to kind of just hover around. Nothing's really there to push it out of the way. But now here comes Maria. This 928 millibars shows you generally when you have millibars the barometric pressure below 950 millibars, you have a very significant hurricane on your hands. So that's certainly concerning. The GFS had some intensity issues when trying to forecast for Irma. It had it as it was a monstrous hurricane, but it had some errors in forecasting intensity. So don't put too much stock in the intensity. It's going to be a damaging hurricane. It's going to be over warm Atlantic waters. I'm crossing over the Bahamas here again, just like Irma did. But if we step forward in time here, we can see that Maria continues to inch north, and Jose begins to weaken here, just kind of becoming a wave in the atmosphere. And then Maria kind of keeps drifting north. There's nothing, no features here except a trough way out in middle of the country that would push it out of the way. There's nothing really here to advance Maria out to sea like we see with some of these storms. So Maria just hangs out, and then Jose continues to move out here. This has this latest run at 18Z, so about 1, 2, 3 p.m. several hours ago, wants to keep Maria off of the coast, and then eventually it doesn't make a landfall, but it goes out. So that's one solution out of tens of solutions of the GFS ensemble. Don't put stock in that. That's not an official forecast. That's not what's going to happen, but that is one model projection of what's expected to happen. So if we now look at the European model, the ECMWF, European Center for Mid-Range Weather Forecasting model, and we step forward, these time steps are bigger. It's in 24-hour time steps here, so that's why it'll seem a little more jumpy. But if we advance here, here's Jose. We go a day ahead, 2 days ahead, 3 days ahead, 4. We see Maria come up here, but the European model has something interesting. It keeps Jose strong, and as Maria approaches, it begins to kind of do something we call the Fujiwara effect, which is a weird word, and it's a weird phenomenon. It's when basically you have two circulations that influence each other, and they'll kind of begin to orbit each other. And this would actually be good news for the East Coast because Maria's right here, so keep that in mind. And if I go forward a day, they merge and then are carried out to sea. So that would certainly, it would be a weird solution. It would be a meteorological phenomenon known as the Fujiwara effect, like I said. But it certainly would be good news because it would keep Maria out to sea. So we have two vastly different solutions from these two models showing a snapshot in time and putting that forward in time. But that doesn't say that's what's going to happen, but it does say that there's still a lot of disagreement in time. So we can't look outside of that 5-day cone yet, to see where Maria is going to go. But as of now, it definitely bears watching because as Maria crosses over the U.S. Virgin Islands, over Puerto Rico, into the Bahamas, if I go back in this area, there certainly doesn't have to go very far to start impacting land. The jump to the west in the forecast tracks could easily take it over land. Even parts of eastern Florida, you're not completely out of the woods because small shifts in track. This is still 5, 6, 7, 8. I mean, this is about 10 days out. This has September 24th. Today's the 18th, so that has it about a week out. Still a lot of uncertainty in that. So what's going to happen in the long term? We're unsure. We don't know what's going to happen, but it bears watching, and it bears a lot of diligence and forecasting, monitoring conditions, because this season we've seen what hurricanes can do. We kind of had some hurricane amnesia with a long drought of not having hurricanes, but we've been reminded of their power and how much devastation they caused between Harvey and Irma, both in the Caribbean and both in the United States. But we know what they can do. We know they're very devastating, so we have to keep a watch on this to see what's going to happen and to see how the forecast pans out and who needs to prepare for what. So I hope this video helped you in some way, and I will try to do daily updates if time warrants. Definitely every other day, if not daily. But we will see what Hurricane Maria does, and we can only hope for the best in Dominica, excuse me, hard to pronounce. And we can only hope for the best and hope that they are keeping safe, and we will see what Maria does in the long run. And for now, I'll sign off, but remember to stay safe and look forward to future videos. And stay safe and have a great day. Thanks.